I probably have to have my mic on. So I wanted to bring on a sports psychologist today. Last month we had nutritionists on and dietitian, and really these series I just want to do because I hate trying to act like I know what the heck I'm talking about when it comes to fields that I don't know anything about. Pretty much I know martial arts, and that's about all I claim to know. So what I'd like to do is keep developing these series for the athletes that want to go further in some of these other fields like nutrition, like sports psychology, and really just kind of get it as a jumping off point for athletes to kind of get into that area as well, because I feel like that's something that's needed. That's a question that I get a lot of times here at the gym. And again, I don't want to be the person that just says, "Oh yeah, go ahead and do this or do that," and that's how you do it. Because I've had my own trials and tribulations with sports psychology, and so I wanted to have Andy on today. Andy, thanks for coming on today.
Appreciate the invitation.
Yeah, I'm going to have you belly up to that or pull it up just slightly more. There we go. So talk to us a little bit about your background, how you got started and all this stuff.
Yeah, so background is a PhD in sport and exercise psychology, University of Idaho.
I'm going to figure out why your mic isn't working here. At least I don't think it is. Something happened between the 4 seconds that we set up ago. Try that one more time.
So background
Nope.
is
For some reason. Gosh, what happened here? This is going great.
hey man, where it goes.
Let me just check one thing here. Try yours one more time. We'll see either that or pull it like 2 inches away from your face.
So background.
Nothing. Gosh, what in the world? Here.
So background.
Ooh.
Hey, we're cooking now.
Oh my gosh.
Just like sport normally, right?
Yeah,
Things don't go the way you plan.
I have no idea what was going on there, but all right. So we had that all worked out like 2 seconds ago, and then it just decided not to work on this. So, all right. So give us the whole Andy Gillham background.
Yeah, the academic side is PhD in sport and exercise psychology. Master's is Master of Science in Human Performance. Bachelor's degree was fitness, strength conditioning, again, with some coaching in there. And what happened was I was coaching football, baseball, track and field, and it became apparent to me that the kids that really were going to go to the next level, college kids, high school kids, whatever level we were talking about, genetically they were there. Physically they were there. Yeah, we can always get them a little bit stronger, a little bit faster. Yes, of course. But where folks really struggled was that mental side. Whether it was the 6 a.m. workout, whether it was being willing to be coachable, whether it was balancing that coach-athlete relationship, any of those pieces, that's where folks faltered. And I coached as a junior coach on staffs with some guys that, quite frankly, were assholes. And I didn't think that my experience was anything unique, meaning I think there's a lot of asshole coaches.
Sure.
And so as a result, I didn't know how to fix it, but it felt icky to me. It felt bad that that's the position we were putting our kids in. And I wanted to do something about that, which is what prompted my change from strength conditioning to PhD in sport and exercise psychology. So while most times folks think sports psychology and they think more athlete based. I've always worked more so with coaches, admin, trying to set the system up so that the athletes have a greater chance of success. And then I certainly have all the skills and do work with individual pro athletes and high level D1 college athletes to help them get their performance higher too. So it's not just at the coach level.
Sure. And so we're going to go over quite a few kind of talking points, if you will, and then just kind of go down the list. So we can, if you're okay with that, we'll kind of start. And
fire away, man.
Okay. So some of the struggles that I see in sport is, low self-esteem, low self-efficacy, low self-confidence. Your thoughts on any of the differences between those three? Is it, I've seen it to where there's a couple models where, okay, your self-efficacy goes into your self-confidence and things like that. How do you see those three kind of aligning, I guess?
Yeah, for the most part, you're going to look at sort of a global self-esteem, and then a little bit more zoomed in self-confidence, and then a really zoomed in self-efficacy. Very rarely do we, outside of a research setting, do we really need to focus in on each one of those pieces. So we just oftentimes chalk it up to a general self-confidence. But what I mean by zoomed out, so self-esteem, I'm a good person. I'm a good dude. I'm a good athlete in general. Mm-hmm. Sure. Then there's self-confidence. Yeah, maybe I'm a good dad, or yeah, maybe I'm a good neighbor, or yeah, I'm a good fighter. And then there's self-efficacy. I can execute this specific move at this time. So it's a degree.
Right. So they all kind of build on each other, if you will.
Yeah. And you can have high self-esteem and then be put in a context where you would have very low self-confidence, mm-hmm. or even worse, a more specific context where you have even lower self-efficacy. Happy to pick on myself here. I think I'm a decent enough guy. I think I'm a smart enough guy. I think I'm reasonably fit, reasonably athletic. But if you ask me to go out there and execute any of you guys' fighting techniques, I will fail miserably.
Sure.
I'll absolutely own that. So my self-efficacy in your gym to do the moves that you guys can do is really low. Even though my self-confidence or self-efficacy to work out or to be physically fit or generally athletic, I'm okay at.
Sure. And so you kind of touched on it a little bit. Sometimes those identities can also cause a little bit of an issue. So, say like you're saying, okay, I'm a athlete, but I'm a really good dad and things like that. I think that's one of the pillars that I've heard for a long time is, okay, I need to, besides just being good at my sport, I need to also find things that are making me the full person or whole person. So, fighting is not my entire life. I'm a good father. I'm a good husband, things like this, where I can really make for sure that doesn't become my one and everything in my life. So if you could talk a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, one of the things that I work a lot with both coaches and athletes on, it's kind of a corny little phrase, but be where your feet are.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is whatever it is you're doing at the moment, be 100% there. If you're in your gym training, your shop, then pay attention. Give everything you got to that. When you're sitting at home with your kids playing sorry, don't be thinking about the gym. Don't be thinking about the shop. Don't be thinking about going grocery shopping. Play the heck out of that game of sorry. If you're out with your buddies, then be out with your buddies and enjoy that. When it's time with the lady, then be with the lady. But the idea of be where your feet are, stay in that moment, enjoy absolutely that moment as much as you can. And ultimately what that does is it will create balance in your life. We humans do better when our life is in balance. We get too far on one end of the spectrum, be it work, be it family, be it playtime, be it anything, a substance, right? A little bit of alcohol is not terrible. A whole lot of alcohol is really bad.
Right.
Water's the same thing. You can actually cause yourself trouble by drinking too much water. We got to have enough. Obviously, not enough water is a terrible thing. Too much water is bad also.
Sure.
We do better when we're in balance, and that's part of being able to understand what part of ourself or us or however we want to define that is a fighter, is a neighbor, is a father, is a spouse, is a friend, is a whatever. Those are the pieces we really want to pay attention to.
Yeah. But I guess the thing that I want to kind of hit home is that, and maybe this is completely wrong, but not making sure that, that I'm honing in on one thing and defining myself as that, so when I, go up to somebody and say, okay, I'm XYZ, just being that.
Yeah, we get to this athlete identity stuff, and we have trouble sometimes letting go of pieces of our identity, and this shows up when athletes are injured, and it's a mess. In a team sport, coaches never know what to do with the athletes that are injured. Do you keep them close and keep them part of the family? But then that doesn't always work. Yeah. Or do you kind of push them aside and say, no, you got to go sit in the training room for more time, and you got to go do all this rehab and whatever else, or go ride the bike over there. Watch. You got to be here and you got to watch. But you don't get to participate. You don't get to come down to the huddles, and you don't get to do those sorts of things. That's a mess too. We don't really have a great answer.
Yeah, that's rough, because anytime you're sitting there, it's like not being able to eat cake and you have 12 cakes in front of you. That's the...
Well, and you're watching your buddies get to eat the cake.
Right.
So now we're doubling and tripling on that same piece there, and we really got trouble. So that's the intention there behind my comment of be where your feet are. When you're here to be the fighter, then man, be the fighter. Give it all you got. And then when you walk out, be the dad, the husband, the whatever. There's all kinds of little tricks that we do with that. One of the ones that I'll try to help guys with, you travel, you get the little, used to anyway, before recycle everything, but the little travel shampoo bottles or conditioner bottles. Yeah. So a lot of guys, I'll work with them and keep an empty one of those in their locker. And it sounds kind of cheesy, so you got to go with me for a minute. But you're going to take that top off, unscrew the lid, make a big exhale into that container. And that's you as a dad, and you as a spouse, and you as a friend, and you as a son, and you as all this other stuff. And you put the cap back on, because it ain't going anywhere. It'll sit there in your locker waiting. But all that's left then inside you is the fighter, is the football player, is the soccer player. So when you walk out on that field, walk out on the mats, you're there. Be where your feet are. 100% in. Go get it. Do it. And then when you're done, you come back to your locker and you're putting your gear back on, you're changing clothes, you release the top back of that shampoo bottle, and all the rest of you comes right back out, because you can't leave it and forget about it. You are still a dad and a spouse and all those other things. But they're usually not helping you when you're out on the mat or in the rink or on the field, something.
Sure. And is that just a mental trigger of being able to really focus down and say, okay, this is the cutoff point when I need to change my mindset?
Yeah. And so some guys I worked with, some of the pro guys, they're away from their family for a lot of the year and they can't travel, or it's such a training away or whatever. One guy really liked his kids. He made it a project, and his kids painted some like hand size, palm size rocks, and he put them on the dashboard of his car. And so that was the moment of like, all right, look, girls, I love you, but I need to leave you in the car.
Sure.
And so the rocks were this
representation of his daughters.
Spot on. And it was a family thing. So when he would come home from trips, when he would do different, come home from camp or come home from any team event, the girls would make a new set of rocks for him for the next trip. And so it was this recurring group family thing that always kept him connected. And it was never perceived as a bad thing by wife, girls, or athlete. We're with you.
Sure.
But we can't go out on the field with you, because that's really not helping you or us. So same sort of idea there. How can we work with that?
And I think that, as a coach, that happens a lot of times where initially when somebody starts dating a significant other that maybe has some of those responsibilities, that, being an athlete like that is part of the reason why they're dating that person, not necessarily because they're an athlete, but because, that's who they are. They see this person that's, a very likable individual because they're being an athlete and doing something they love and things like that. And it's weird that once that relationship starts to develop, you see that some commitments sometimes dwindle down, just because they're trying to, make commitments with both, their significant other and their, athletic time frame or schedule work, and sometimes that's very difficult. So any thoughts on ways that like that athletes can start to maybe say, hey, I need this time? Because I think that's after a while, maybe it's almost a jealousy factor in the fact that that spouse or significant other says, hey, you should be spending time with me. But on our side, as a coach, I try to, tell that spouse or significant other, okay, this needs to happen, because if he doesn't, he could actually get himself seriously injured. But your thoughts on ways to speak to the significant other about that? And this is 15 years of marriage, and I have still no clue how to actually,
man.
So if you have an idea, I'm going to be really surprised.
The cheesy answer is the same thing that anybody would say, in the sense of it's just communication.
Sure.
You have to tell them, hey, look, this is what it was. I need to spend 3 blocks of 30 minutes in the room by myself doing imagery. Mm-hmm. Now, I could stay at the facility and do that in a back corner and whatever, but that's 90 minutes then extra that I'm going to be gone.
Right.
What I'm telling you, significant other, is that I'd like to do this at home, but you have to then keep the kids away from me for the half an hour. And if that means we need to get the kids to bed a little earlier than normally we would like, or that means that, hey, that's half an hour less of time that you and I have for Netflix or for catching up on the day or whatever. But where it comes from is the communication. It comes from no, this is what I have to do. And while the world has changed a lot and most people don't just sort of have their traditional 9 to 5.
Right.
That's still a thing, because we all grew up with more people having 9 to 5ers than didn't.
For sure.
And so you're an athlete, you go compete, and then you're done. No.
Right.
There's a lot more that goes on. And sometimes those significant others on either side weren't an athlete or weren't a high level athlete or don't really understand the commitments. So let's make sure that we're on the same page. Let's not assume sort of ill intent when it could just be a lack of information. So let's square up that first. And some of the guys, especially at the pro level, what we'll have them do is we'll make it just a chart. Put it instead of like a chore list, right, on the fridge, a weekly schedule that includes time at the facility, time that they need to work on their craft while at home, time that they need to go to the gym, go to whatever. And it's just, again, it sounds cheesy, but it's communication. It's making sure we're on the same page.
Awesome. Yeah. So basically, when you're there, be present with them every single time, and then communicate as much as possible. I like that. So some of the other issues that I know that people run into, a big one, fear of what other people think of yourself, and I think this becomes more and more apparent with social media coming out there as well. So, any overall broads. Obviously, I think that's going to be different with each person. But any overall broad thoughts on, what we can do to combat that fear of worrying about what others think about us.
So the others think about us part is a challenge, and that's a challenge inside sport and a challenge outside of sport. Mm-hmm. First thing that I'd say is, why are you on social media? What are you getting out of it? Are you building your brand? And what does that mean? Who is it that you're targeting? How are you getting your information or your position out to them? So be purposeful in what you're on social media. If I just met with an athlete tonight before I came here, and he had made the comment to me of, hey, he had a light week in training, and so he didn't know what to do with his time. So he sat down on his phone and just started scrolling, and it was 3 hours later.
Sure.
He was shocked that he spent 3 hours doing it. It's not something he normally does. And he just got sucked into, I don't even know what he was doing. He didn't even tell me. He just 3 hours gone.
Yeah, it's like I mean, it's literally like a lottery that they're trying to go through, right? Like you're looking through everything and you're trying to see something that is, and it's just, in my opinion, probably feeding off of that same idea that you would from a lottery, just trying to win or get a good post that you want to see, things like that. So
Well, and so from that standpoint, there is research out there now that shows, and I wish I could cite some of it sitting here, but it has to do with, we check our phone all the time because we're looking for a text message, an email, or whatever, just in case the ringer didn't work, just in case we didn't hear the buzz or the vibration or the whatever, because what we're looking for is that connection. We're looking for that little epinephrine, that little dopamine hit, that little positive neurochemical signal that says, hey, someone wants to talk to you. Hey, someone likes you. Hey, you're important to somebody. And that makes us feel good. And so that's what we're trying to do. But then again, back to your question of how do we deal with this in social media? For a lot of folks, they're going to find more bad out there than they're going to find good. So is it really worth if we're doing it for the purpose of finding those good little positive hits, but we end up with more negative than we do positive, it stands to reason we need to reconsider what we're actually using it for, how much time we're devoting to it, maybe even what platform we're on, or are we taking positions on things, or are we just scrolling?
yeah, I see it a lot of time as a comparison peril as well, where it's okay, we're looking at what other athletes are doing out there. And a lot of times, some of the content that they're putting out there on, Instagram or Facebook is completely staged for that, So it looks like they're going out there and just absolutely killing. I mean, I've seen several athletes do this where it's like, hey, can I borrow your gym for 20 seconds while I do an Instagram video? And they'll go on a bag or they'll go on a weight set and they'll absolutely kill it for 30 seconds for an Instagram video and then be like, all right, thanks, see you later. And then that's it. And that's, none of our athletes, but athletes that have come into to our gym. And that was like eye-opening to me where it's like, okay, then every other amateur athlete out there is thinking, oh man, this is what this guy is doing, 6 days a week. And it's really interesting to me to see that, that kind of trickery, if you will, from some of the other athletes.
Well, we see that in strength conditioning all the time, where we got dudes out there in the snow with no shirt on because they're the hype guy,
right?
Or we're gonna bust flaming boards on our back because that's what's gonna fire dudes up. It's not. We're chasing fool's gold sort of thing, right? We're prioritizing that moment in an unsustainable way that sets us up for problems later. The other thing that I go back to with social media, though, is another little trick that I'll work with folks. If they're the subject of the social media post, right? So they're high enough profile that folks are writing about them or targeting them or whatever it is. One of the things that I'll do is I'll ask them to go get depends on the person, how big they are. Yeah. But get some piece of paper, start like a Post-it note, something. Put down all the people that you actually care about, what they think of you on that piece of Post-it note. And then every time you're reading something, is the poster of that someone on your Post-it note? No? Go away? Don't care.
Right.
Easier said than done. I get it. But it's, again, another little trick of how do we sort through the garbage, the trolls, the people that just want to be jerks, the people that get their own endorphin hits by being mean to somebody else versus the people that we actually care about, the people that, you know what, mama's calling me out on something, I better listen to mama.
Right.
Because there are people in our life that we need to call us out on stuff. That can happen. But sorting through who's causing us trouble and who's not, that may be it. And sometimes we can't fill a Post-it note. And so then it's a real easy conversation from my standpoint of, look, man, you're spending 2 hours scrolling through this. There's only 6 people in the world that you really give a damn about how they feel about you.
Sure.
They're not the ones posting on Twitter. They're the ones sending you a direct text message.
Right.
So care about your text messages. Take care of them, folks. And let's not worry about Twitter superheroes and whatever else we got.
Yeah. By the way, if you guys have questions, please feel free to just message us in the on the Facebook Live there. I see Max. Hey, what's up? He's on the USA Judo team. I don't know if you still are. Are you still on the USA Judo team, or are you just raking in the money at Fuji Mats? What are you doing there? And then also Brad Rilling. I think you know who that guy is. I would think anyways. He's a Sanford guy. And a bunch of other people on there. So awesome. I had that same conversation with somebody last night. You know, one of our athletes this weekend had a really weird, something I've never seen before, where they ended up calling the bout a no decision because the referee kind of made a mistake. And one of our fans really got on us and just kind of was super annoyed with the way that a couple of our athletes' fans were acting. And I don't actually know any of these fans. And I was actually hurt because I considered him, you know, a really good friend. And that was like exactly like you said. I expected that to be a text conversation, and then when it became something that was on social media and out for the world to see, that was for me an immediate you know. And I told him, I was like, man, this is a friendship breaker for me, because this is not somebody that I want in my life, even though we've had a good relationship for the last 15 years. And so that was a big surprising thing for me. But I don't know. Your thoughts, is that, you know, should I unfriend that person, or should I, you know, have a text conversation, or that's kind of each to your own, I would assume?
Yeah, I'm going to stay away from all the shoulds, because I'm not going to be the one. I don't know enough about it, but generally my style would be much more so ask questions. You're going to come up with the right answer yourself.
Yep.
So is this guy, gal, whoever, bringing more good to your world than bad? And at the moment, it's maybe more bad than good. So is there enough sort of social capital built up already that there's a pass on this one, and you got to go get a beer and you got to squash it, but there's still hope? Or is it one where, no, man, like 10 years ago was the last time that I was really connected with you and I really felt close to you, and we just kind of been fading in and out since then. So now you crossed it and we're done. I got enough other folks in my world to occupy my sort of love and attention that we're done now, bud.
Sure. And then on the other side, another thing I've seen is with social media stuff that you should be posting more than you're maybe looking at stuff. Any thoughts on that? Is that because sometimes everybody will just kind of lurk on there and go, and it should be maybe relevant posts as well, rather than like we were talking about before, where they're almost fake posts, if you will.
Yeah, I don't know that I have a great answer for you there, but I would go back to what I said earlier of, why are you doing it?
Sure.
If you're doing it just to have your voice heard, is that even getting to the right people? Or do we maybe need to call our buddy and have that conversation, you know, actually using a phone for what a phone was intended for at one point, to call someone and make a human connection that way? Or is this a text conversation, or where is it at? But that's, again, I don't have a great answer for that question of posting versus lurking, but I would question, what are you doing on there? What is it? If you're getting are you getting news from this, or are you sharing news from your world, or are you killing half an hour?
Sure.
We all just find those 10, 20, 30-minute blocks that sometimes we just need to kill by scrolling through a news site or a fan site or whatever else. Doesn't mean you need to post that. It's your own sort of mental escape from whatever else you got going on right then.
Yeah. And then, you know, sometimes you'll see a little bit of envy coming through with, you know, some of the other athletes. Maybe they've seem like they're just absolutely killing it. And, you know, a couple things that I've seen is, okay, maybe friending that person, reaching out to that person, talking, rather than just being, being envious of that person, trying to get in contact with that person, and to see starting a relationship that way, to see not necessarily if that's a true thing, but just try to, you know, really ask questions and try to make yourself a better as an athlete from that other source.
Well, fair. But the first question, I mean, I guess I'd push back a little bit in that the first question, why are you doing this?
Sure.
And the idea of, would you, as another athlete, would you post your garbage workout? Would you post your just, man, I'm dogging it today?
Sure.
Or would you post when you're killing it? Would you post it when you're having a great day? Would you post when you're all jazzed up, kind of thing? and assume that the other guy is also following that same pattern, right? Most people don't post, holy smokes, today was brutal. I couldn't get a combination to go through. Speed bag crushed me today. Shoot, I fell down on a crossover step. I mean, folks don't usually post that stuff.
But as a sports psychologist, would you like that or no?
I don't care. I don't care. When I work with the pro guys, one of the things that I tell them a lot is I will not, unless you explicitly direct me to, and that's part of the deal, I will not Google you. I will not follow you on ESPN. I don't want that, because I don't want the media, the social media, any kind of media perspective to get in the way of our work. I need to know what you're thinking, what you're feeling. So you got to be honest with me. And if I'm processing what you tell me through what I read on a blog or through what I saw in comments, that changes how I view what you say. So I want to be where my feet are. When I'm with you, I want to be 100% with you. And when I'm with somebody else, I want to be 100% with them. Same reason. I don't want to have the ESPN or the other blogger or this troll get into that relationship in that space. That's a pretty sacred space to me. If you're going to tell me honestly what you're thinking, what you're feeling, I want to respect that as much as possible so that we can make some progress.
Sure. Next one would be fear of injury, and so, or coming off of injuries as well. I've had a knee injury for 10 years now, and it's definitely hampered my ability a lot of times, not necessarily because I get injured from there. I don't feel strong from there. It's a mental block that I have a lot of times when I want to use that leg, where it's just, even if it's for a half a second, me saying, oh, okay, we got to be a little bit more we got to be a little bit more careful with this knee, because I don't want to have it injured again, things like that. Some broad ideas on what we could start working on there.
To me, coming back from an injury is different than fear of being injured up front.
Sure. So, and I should say the coming back from an injury a lot of times is what I'm talking about. Especially on our side, usually that, even though it's crazy, it seems like, okay, especially on the MMA side, maybe not on the jiu-jitsu side as much or whatever, but like you're getting punched in the face, and that should be a legitimate fear. But a lot of times, by the time people have trained, that's not as much of a fear. I would say the biggest fear that any of our athletes have, for the most part, is, performing in front of others, 4,000 people, or, what other people are going to think about them, things like that. It's not as much a fear of injury, I should say, in sport, more of a, recovering from an injury.
Yeah, so let's take those two examples there. Getting hit in the face and performing in front of 4,000 people.
Right.
By the time that someone is high enough up the ranks to perform in front of 4,000 people, they've been hit in the face 1,000 times, 10,000 times.
Oh, probably 10,000.
50,000 times, right?
At least probably 10,000 times, at least in practice, anyways.
Yeah. So
lightly. I'm not trying to get. I'm not trying to get the guys and the neurologists starting to.
Yeah. But so the point there is that you're making what I would argue is a false comparison.
Sure.
Because you're asking, hey, getting hit in the face, that stinks. We're all going to agree that that's not a great plan. But you've been hit in the face 10,000 times, and ultimately your face is still there and you're still standing and you're doing your thing. You maybe haven't performed in front of 4,000 people yet, which creates this unknown,
right? Which
creates this, I don't know if I come out on the other end. Now we know cognitively we know we're going to come out on the other end, and we're not going to get eaten by a black hole or whatever. But it's a false equivalency there to this thing that we've done 10,000 times versus this thing that we've never done. So in that respect, hey, if you're really worried about performing in front of 4,000 people, then we got to get you in an arena, even if you're not competing, of 4,000 people. And we got to get you as close as we can. And we got to let you sit there and feel the environment. And we got to get that into you, even if we need to sort of GoPro it for the next guy and pass it along down the chain of athletes at Next Edge or however. The idea of, no, we need to teach those imagery skills. We need to get into that. And That's one of the things. I'll call it an NFL experience image. So when I'm working with college guys and they're making the league for the first time, MLB guys, same thing. That in football, that opening kickoff, that, good God, I'm an NFL player. I am
Right.
on an NFL roster, and there's 40,000 in the stadium, and it's packed, and there are X number of millions watching anywhere. Big time college kids, same thing, but they haven't made it to the
Right.
NFL level yet, so that's still an unknown. So teach guys, how do we image that? What is this going to feel like? What do you think this is going to feel like? How does it do? So that we can get them prepared to essentially have imagined themselves on an NFL field 50, 100 times, 200 times before that ultimate first kick. It's not 10,000 to 0 there in terms of the hit in the face and never perform in front of 4,000 before, but we're getting 100, 200 reps
Sure.
done with this beforehand. So we're making progress, if you will.
And then actually, before we get to that, the second portion, the dealing with being injured, for me, anxiety obviously plays a huge part in your sports performance. And so things that I've done in the past with some of the athletes is try to go into situations where they know that they're going to have anxiety. Maybe they're going to go and do karaoke, or they're going to go and creating some form of anxiety. Do you feel like that, learning how to deal with that anxiety is going to often move over into the sports arena, or is that just, okay, I'm getting good at that one specific thing? Can it have any transference? Or?
There can be some transference, but what I would go back to differently, yeah? I get what you're trying to do there, and it's not
Sure.
wrong. It's not bad. I've certainly done the same thing with guys at different spots.
Sure.
But I'd back up one step, though, yeah? So for at least the last 25, 30 years in the sports psych research, it's been really clear. We have almost a direct 1.0 inverse relationship between self-confidence and anxiety. So as one goes up, the other goes down.
Sure.
Like you cannot both be freaked out
Right.
that you're not able to do this and ultimately confident that you can do this.
Right. Yep. This is not going to work.
That doesn't work. So we have this inverse relationship there. So when I'm working with an athlete that comes to me for anxiety, it sounds kind of mean. I don't mean it that way, but I like it because I can target that two ways. If you're telling me you've got too much anxiety, I can raise your self-confidence, which changes the ratio, or I can lower your anxiety, which again changes the ratio. So I get two levers to pull there, if you will. So rather than putting them you're asking about transference, putting them in a different situation and trying to get them to cope with it and whatever else, I'd back up a step first and see, where is the problem that anxiety is high, or is maybe the bigger problem that self-confidence is so low?
Sure.
And because we have the research base to support that these are so much of an inverse relationship, we then have two levers we can manipulate. So it's not necessarily about just placing them in another highly anxious sort of environment where we're going to work on coping skills and trying to deal with that. The second one is let's back up and see, maybe it's not so much an anxiety problem. It's just, holy smokes, man, self-confidence is so low. We got to find a way to pump that up. Does that make sense at all?
Yep, perfect sense. The other thing that that I've looked at, and I probably have almost as many books on this as a lot of other stuff, but I don't claim to know even the least bit about it. So, but things that I've read as well is, okay, if I'm training a lot of times, maybe my heart rate is 100 beats per minute. And then I go out there and I compete, and my heart rate goes up so much that then it becomes, okay, all my blood is basically going to, my heart, my core. And so my cognitive skills have lowered so much that I can't really do much. And so some of the thoughts on there is, okay, we have to do one of two things. We either need to figure out in competition how to get that heart rate down back to where you're able to be, functioning human again with good cognition, or trying to figure out how we're training at near that same heart rate level. agree, disagree, thoughts?
In general, I agree, especially with the back half there. We generally don't do a very good job of making making training akin to competition.
Sure.
We think we do, but we don't. So if we're going to do one of the things that I'll look at, I do a fair amount of work with gymnastics. Okay.
Yep.
So we're going to do a gymnastics meet prep day in the training facility. But we're not going to have judges, and we're not going to have real rules, and we're not going to dress in our Leo for competition, and we're not going to do all these other things. Well, it's not really a meet prep day. It's a different type of training that is then not like your normal training, but it's also not like your competition. So to me, that goes back to this hit in the face 10,000 times versus other. Okay, we added a new training modality, but it's not really helping you get better at practice, and it's not really helping you get better at competition. So what are we doing? So I'm not going to go with the shoulds. I'm going to present this to the coach and say, what are we doing here? So from that aspect, I would be curious as to, well, how realistic can we make your competition level training days? How close is this? Are we walking in? We have music blaring? Are we spectators? Is the environment sort of electric like it is in a ring? Or did we just kind of say, hey, Tuesday's meet prep day kind of thing?
Sure.
And we're going to say the right things and we're going to tell you this, but no, ultimately you're training in even your clothes, right? Your clothes are what you would wear to train, not what you would wear to compete. Well, then it's not right away there. When you're leaving the locker room, when you're getting dressed, when you're doing that, you're not in straight competition mode. So whether it's a physiological variable, like you're saying with the heart rate, or whether it's just how we're viewing the activity, the training day, the whatever we're going after, if we're in competition mode, then let's do it. Again, be where your feet are, right? Do it 100% on that as opposed to the other. So that part of what you're saying, I absolutely agree with. How can we make training more competition-like when we're trying to make it more competition-like? We can't train at that level every day. That's not
Sure.
what I'm saying at all. But when we're targeting that, then we got to target it. We got to do it. We can't just say we're going to do it, and we're back to the fake social media posts and the facade of things.
Sure. And that's what, and again, it sounds like maybe I need to work on that even a little bit more, but that's what we've been trying to do with our Fridays. Our Fridays are really just for the competition group. And then, I want those athletes thinking, okay, what am I eating that day? How am I warming up? Like that should be their test every single week of, okay, how can I figure out the best formula for me to come out on a Friday with, because typically Fridays are our fight days, maybe Saturdays as well. But that's how we can formulate that day to be the best possible day that we can. And on the jiu-jitsu side, we can get pretty close to competition speed, or honestly, we can get to competition speed. MMA, that's tough. I mean, I think even once a week we would have, pretty high brain damage if we were training at 100%. You used to see that honestly a lot. 5-10 years ago, where athletes were honestly, for lack of a better term, they were fighting every weekend. But now with seeing so much CTE that's starting to really go away. You see that with the NFL as well. Is that kind of what you're saying? Is get to as close as you can with that particular day?
When it's the environment too.
Yeah.
Again, it sounds silly to talk about clothing, man, but on your Fight Fridays, are they fighting in the same thing that they would train in on a Tuesday?
Sure.
Or are they fighting in what they would fight in on a legit in front of 4,000 people? And maybe we don't go quite that far, right? But I mean,
Right.
you get, there's a,
Otherwise, I'm going to be paying a lot of people just come in here. We do have a small homeless community here that I'm sure would be happy to come in, but yeah, that'd be
Sure.
that'd be tough.
So-
But yeah, I agree. That would be ideal. Was like you said before. That's coming into an arena where there's 4,000 people is definitely much different than, okay, we're fighting in front of 300 people or 400 people. So
yeah.
going back to I just got myself injured and starting to come back from that. That one's a big one for me. So if you have any good tips on that, let me know.
Yeah, really, it's going to be, at first, it's going to be about throwing some objective data at the person. Because if the objective data from PT, from the physician, from whatever says, no, man, you should be able to go perform. You should be able to do this. Range of motion is there. Strength is there. We've got what we need. Then the problem is emotional. It's upstairs, right? So how do we combat things that maybe are a little irrational, that maybe are a little problematic? Well, we need to throw some data at it. We need to throw okay, man, let's, whether we're going to do I don't know if we have any tech in the shop here that will measure power, measure watts, measure anything of that, force production or velocity, anything that we can do to throw some objective data. Hey, you're kicking as fast, as powerful as you've ever done.
Sure.
Your metrics, if you will, are absolutely competition ready. So essentially we want to try to throw some objective data at the person to give them a reason to, because essentially we're asking them to argue against themselves, right? One side of them, their subjective side is saying, whew, knee hurts, don't know if I can do this. And then they don't go their all. And if they run up against somebody that is going their all, now they do get hurt. And they say, haha, I couldn't have done it, I got hurt.
Right. Yeah.
Well, you got hurt because you didn't go your all, and you didn't go your all because you were worried about getting hurt. So we get in this nasty little cycle there. But that's all on that subjective side. So if we can just pile data at them, whether it's from a test, whether it's something we do over at Sanford, whether it's a sparring match, whatever it is, throw the objective data at them that gives them their cognitive side a way to argue against their own emotional side. We got to provide them something. It's not just going to work with sunshine and bubbles. Oh, it'll be okay. No. That's not the way. Coming back from an injury, coming back or at a high competitive level, at an elite level, sunshine and bubbles and just the power of positive thinking, that's not enough. We have to do more than that.
And you touched on just a little bit about I'll phrase it this way. Your thoughts on, combating my, my thinking brain with my chimp brain, if you will, or the, system 1 versus system 2 kind of situation. My understanding is that chimp brain or system 1 brain, that my amygdala, basically that's that fight or flight kind of situation, or I should say fight, flight, or freeze kind of situation, versus my thinking part. How do we start to calm one down, calm that chimp one down a little bit and get us thinking rationally, both, before competition and in competition? Host of different ways, I suppose.
There is, but I think the simplest, and maybe it's the broadest, maybe it's the simplest, however, but where I would start, by all means, is finding a way to stay in the present. What are you thinking when you're out there? Right in that moment, right? Whatever moment we're talking about, what are you thinking? Oh, I'm not thinking anything. No, BS. You're absolutely thinking something. Sure. You may not be aware of it, which is the problem, but you're thinking something. And so how do we calm down, essentially, our own particular version of crazy that just spirals out of control on us? How do we calm that down? We give it something else to think about. This is attention bleed sort of 101, right? Mm-hmm. Why has our cars, the tech of our cars, changed so that our controls are on the steering wheel? Well, so we don't have to reach over here. And why is it that we're not supposed to be texting when we drive? And why is it that we're not supposed to be talking on the phone? Well, we want Bluetooth and we want all these tech things so that we can focus more on the task of driving, as opposed to, 10% of our attention bled off to the radio and 10% bled off to the text message, and all of a sudden we're out there driving at 60% attention. It's very similar to the same thing. If we're just letting our emotional side run wild with us, we're not actually fighting out there with 100% attention anymore. We're fighting out there with 60, 70. We're kind of making numbers up here, but we're fighting at less than 100%.
Right.
So let's focus on what it is we're supposed to be doing, whether it's step by step, whether it's in the moment, whether it's setting up a plan beforehand, whether it's having a good imagery plan so we have an idea of what the fight is going to look like, or at least what we're going to try to execute, and working through that as an imagery skill beforehand for weeks, months at a time, that we can see ourselves executing those skills. So we're building our self-confidence. So when we walk into the ring again, we've executed this skill in front of 4,000 people 500 times. It's not the first time. The other piece that I would say is, as a coach, or even as a consultant in my spot, as I said before, kind of jokingly, but also I do mean it seriously, I don't do shoulds. I had the old Bill Russell, if you remember Bill Russell, right? Celtics, great center. Yeah. So he, in his book, when he talked about, I think it was called Red and Me, and he talked about his relationship with Auerbach, his coach. Russell commented on how he vomited every game, all the time. That was his thing. And he made the comment of like this, I didn't feel ready until I vomited. Now, there's some learned behavior there, and I'm not advocating for this by any means, but the reality was he adopted this thing that is what told him he was ready to compete. So is this anxiety-based? Is this controlling the emotion side? Is this being in the moment and knowing now I'm ready to go? Was that his version of the little shampoo trick that I had said before? However, but one of the comments that he really emphasized was, and forgive the direct quote, paraphrase here kind of thing, but it was, he's talking about, it's not about getting the butterflies to fly in formation. It's just recognize where they're at. Recognize you have. It's not about controlling it all. It's not about getting rid of the butterflies. It's just getting them to fly in the formation you need them to be. So it's not that you have to be all calm before you compete. It's not that you have to be all jacked up before you compete. Everybody's different. So what do you need? And then coaches, guys like me, shouldn't walk around telling everybody, well, don't do this, don't act like that, don't be fired up, don't. No. Do you know that this is what you need? Yes? Cool. I got nothing. Let's go. One of the funniest stories I have from that one, I was working with a D1 little softball, and this girl, 5'2", 105 pounds, slap hitter. She cursed herself out more than anybody I've ever seen. That's what she needed. You wouldn't think it looking at her, but that's what she needed. I mean, it was pretty vulgar, some of the stuff that she was saying, but that's what she needed to get herself ready. I didn't recommend it. I actually felt uncomfortable hearing what she was saying sometimes.
Sure.
But that's what she needed. It's not about me. It's not about what the coach needs or wants. It's about making sure that the athlete is recognizing what puts the athlete in the right position, the right frame of mind, the right spot to go be successful. So self-awareness is huge.
Yeah, I was just an odd fact about me. I'm a 3-poo kind of guy. If I don't poo 3 times before competing, I don't feel quite ready. I guess it's not quite like Bill Russell, but kind of the same way. But in speaking to somebody else about that, those butterflies that you'd have a lot of times, it's somebody reframed that for me a little bit and said, okay, that's the excitement that you get to do something that you don't normally get to do on an every day. It's the same feeling that you have before Christmas, or you buy a brand new car, all these things, like you still have those same kind of butterflies. You associate those with a good thing rather than a bad thing, like competing. And so that was kind of huge for me.
Yeah, because what you're talking about there is essentially you're giving yourself permission to give a damn.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
You're doing something that's important to you. It's okay to give a damn.
Sure.
I don't care if this is your profession or your hobby or you want to have the best lawn in town. I don't care. If it's something that's important to you, then it's okay to give a damn. And when you're tested on that, it's okay to care about the outcome. So don't freak out about the caring portion.
Sure.
Care.
Yeah.
Give a damn. By all means, give a damn.
Yeah. And then on the 3-poo thing, that was for me. That was okay. Now I feel lighter. I feel more able to move around, and I don't have to worry about maybe having an accident while I'm sitting here trying to have competition. Those are the videos that I've seen where that happens. I feel so bad. So so bad for the athletes. All right. The other thing as a coach, okay, I see an athlete, they're going out. There's, they've, ask, okay, how you feeling right now? Is that something I should be asking? Because I've done that before, and I think maybe it's probably different with each athlete. But I've done that before, and I've just seen often, usually one of three things that me and that person are on track as far as the way that they maybe feel pre-competition. Two, that like it's just a blatant lie because that athlete is, in my opinion, not where they need to be. And then three, they don't recognize that they're maybe not where they need to be. So as a coach, your thoughts on, okay, do I address these concerns? And we're talking maybe a time frame of 60 minutes before a match or competition, whatever. All the way up to the competition. Should I let those ride with the way that they are, or should I try to, in that time, try to bring them back and say, okay, look at all this work that you put in, all this, give them some quantifiable data, I guess.
In general, I would say if you're having those doubts, questions, comments on fight day, on an hour before, as you were saying, then you're already toast, man. It's a crapshoot. You should have those answers before now. The athlete should be trained and by trained, I mean trained for competition, training, all the stuff we were talking about before, right? So that maybe we can't actually get them in front of 4,000 to fight before, but
right.
Everything leading up to the day. And hey, this is a huge day. There's training days, there's fight Fridays in the shop, and then there's the fight, the competition, right? And so we have different gradients there along the way. So as a coach, you need to know what that athlete needs on the fight day. Well, the only way you're going to know that is if you've prepped them along the way and you've changed that. So in general, one of the worst things coaches do is that hype speech, that pregame speech beforehand.
Oh, I'm definitely okay. We don't need to worry about that. I'm definitely not that. I don't think. If anything, I'm the exact opposite of that. But maybe not the exact opposite. That sounds bad. But yeah, I've never been because for me as a coach, I'm never a hype person, and so for me, anything that I were to do, because I've tried that maybe once or twice, because athletes have requested that, but it comes out of me so fake that it doesn't very inauthentic, and so it's something that I'm not able to do, and I try to let my athletes know that. So
yeah, aside from the authenticity argument, what really happens here is the science behind this is the individualized zone of optimal functioning. So an eyes-off model, if you've seen this before, and originally to start as just a very simple U, and everybody was basically the same and blank, blank, blank. And essentially it's your performance level increases, as does your arousal level, your anxiety level, your give a damn level, until such a point as too much arousal, too much anxiety, too whatever, and then your performance falls off a cliff. Well, what we found is that some folks have a really narrow band where they can compete. Some folks have a bigger band. Some folks have a huge spike and then they fall off instantly. So yeah. So the coach that gives the super hyped up, or as you're saying, the exact opposite, the really calming influence, those either can work if you know that individual athlete is under or over. So, for example, if you know that this guy that you're trying to get ready to compete on fight day is too high, he's too angry, he's too aggressive, he's too fired up, then your approach of being a little calmer can help back them down into their more optimal competition zone. But if you're talking to a guy who's already too low and you calm and give that, well, you took him even further from where he needs to be. So we have a bigger problem.
Okay.
It's just the opposite of the hype guy, right? Hype guy gets everybody's, I'm ready to fight. And then the hype speech comes in and now the guy's lost it. He's gone way too far off the top and performance is going to tank. So either one could be a problem, which is my point there of if we're playing those games on fight day, we're probably not really ready to compete quite yet. Okay. We probably should have done a little bit more mental on the front end training stuff, prep stuff to make sure that we're in the right spot. And that, as I said before, that starts with athlete self-awareness. If you're the coach guessing and the athlete can't tell you, we're both guessing. And generally speaking, if we're both guessing, we're not in a good spot.
And so that needs to be more of an open door policy between you and the coach and the athlete, of being able to, me ask that question and get an honest answer, and then that athlete being able to tell me concerns that they have.
Yeah, and that's a case where I'm not trying to advocate for myself here, guys like me in that spot, but sometimes that's a tough conversation to have between athlete and coach. And it's not that either person has bad intentions. Both can have great intentions, but we have what I end up calling sort of a message versus messenger problem. Coach has the right message, but coach has all these other roles and all these other messages that he's sending too. Maybe that piece isn't best served by the coach in that moment. Maybe that's a conversation that I have with coaches, as I work with coaches pretty frequently, about how do we have that conversation with athletes and how do we do that? Because it is about the athlete performing well. And most coaches, what is the number one objective for a coach? Put the athletes in a position to maximize their chance for success. That's what it's about, right? Whether it's youth league, whether it's high school, college, pro, whatever. Yeah, we got to win, of course. Yeah. We want to do that. But how do we win? Athletes are in a more advantageous position. That's really what coaches are trying to do. And that's what we're trying to help them do.
Awesome. Next on the list, I have cognitive dissonance. So this would be, and I apologize, I'm probably going to kill this, but maybe you're going out and eating candy even though you know you shouldn't. You're doing that, or maybe you're hiding the fact that you're eating that candy from somebody just because you want to perceive or have them perceive you as an athlete when maybe you don't. So you have this almost the real person and the fake person that you kind of have to put out there, and maybe the issues between those two. I don't know if I'm close at all or
you are, but I'm not sure which part are fake there, because it can't just be a Snickers bar.
Sure.
So there's got to be something more than that.
Sure.
Behind this question, it can't just be a Snickers bar there.
Athletes ranging from maybe I'm smoking and I know I shouldn't because I'm an athlete, or maybe I'm going out and doing things that I know I shouldn't be doing because I'm an athlete. So how people can start to address these? Are they changing their thought pattern? Are they trying to how can we get them from downplaying this negative thing and getting them to actually work on that?
So one of the questions, again, I don't like the shoulds, because then you come across as judgmental, whether it's me as the outside consultant or whether it's coach. So one of the things that I'll try to encourage folks to do is, again, go with questions. All right, hey, man, I came in smelling like smoke again. Pretty confident that you were out having a cigarette or vaping or whatever you're doing. We know, there's no debate. We know that impairs lung function. So we're going to skip that as a debate. We're going to assume that that's science and fact. So then we need to have a conversation about the goals that you've told me you want to achieve. Because when you come in smelling like smoke, I'm fairly confident that you're not going to be able to achieve those goals that you're talking about. And it makes me wonder, what are you doing here, man? Where are we at with this? And if you want to change your goals, hey man, I'll be here and I'll support you as best I can, and we'll make new goals, and I'll train you the best I can, and I'll give you everything I got. But I'm telling you from my side, if you're doing this thing over here that is essentially incompatible with the goals that you told me you wanted and what you're here working for, I got to call you out on that, man. So can we have that conversation? Does that make sense? If you approach it that way? Because if you come at him, again, it's something, especially something like smoking. Dude knows it ain't good for him.
Right.
This is not a debate here about, well, no, I think cigarettes are really good for me. They're bad for everybody else in the world, but they're really good for me. That's not a debate we're going to have. And if that's really the belief that the guy has, you're not winning that debate. So don't go down that road. But when we put it in terms of, well, this is what you're doing, but it's incompatible with this other thing that you told me you wanted to do, and I'm here trying to help you do. We got to square this up somehow. Do we need to change the goals and the objectives we've set, or do you need to stop doing this other thing, cigarettes or whatever it is?
Sure.
Does that make sense or no?
Yep. No, I agree. And then on the, on goals, often I'll have this as well as a coach that maybe the goal is, here, and the, not necessarily the work ethic, but the thought of where the work ethic should be is like here. Is that just me and them having a sit down conversation in brutal honesty? Because, I'll have athletes that want to make it into the UFC, which is, a very small select group of people. And even when you're in there, you're still making lower than money than I feel like you should. So, it's maybe they're spending, thinking 3 to 4 hours a week is good enough. And for me, like if you're trying to really change your life, if you want to stop doing, your 9-to-5 job and really commit to something like this, I mean, you're talking, 20, 40, 80 hours additionally than what you're doing outside of your normal job a lot of times. And maybe that's, includes, working out, seeing somebody like yourself, watching videotapes, coming in here and training, things like that. Do I, is it a brutal honesty thing where I say, okay, your goals do not match your output? Is that, and I just have to be, 100% clear with that?
Yeah. So 2 things there, 2 tips, if you would. 1, write it out, man. Don't just say it. Write it out and say, look, you're going to have to hit the gym training, weights training, resistance training, 5 hours a week.
Sure.
Not even days.
Sure.
Because it's not a whole day, right? So that's one of those tricks that I'm talking about there. You say you got to come in 5 days. That doesn't mean 24 hours a day for 5 days. What you really mean is some number of hours, right?
Sure.
So we just start checking it off. We're like, look, man, you got 8 hours of stuff to do every day, plus sleep, plus personal hygiene, plus errands, plus your job, plus whatever you got to do for personal entertainment, however, to be a dad, to be a husband, to be a whatever. We got to start chalking this stuff up. Look at it on paper. This is what it takes to get where you think you're going. So, and essentially that's question 1, right? All right, athlete, do you trust me, coach, to know what it takes to get you to this next level? Yeah, coach, I trust you. All right, cool. Well, let's have a chat. And then you look at all these things, whether it's a sports psych, whether it's a nutrition, whether it's meal prep then, whether it's, no, man, you're really not going to go out to eat but once every 3 weeks because we really got to hammer that nutrition, or we got to get that cardio in shape, or sparring in the gym, plus technique work, plus, and you just start chalking all those pieces up, put it in front of them. Again, get that objective piece in there. Let's get away from abstract of, we got to do more. Because that's what coaches will say a lot, right?
Right.
You got to give me more. More what, dude?
Right.
Like, not trying to be an ass, but yeah, more what? More time in the shop because you want more money? More cardio so I can just go for a walk? No, that ain't getting your heart rate up high enough. That's not what we're talking about. Well, I got to get stronger. All right, stronger what? Stronger arms, stronger legs, more. What do you mean by stronger? Do you mean more powerful legs, or do you mean able to be more fatigued, or to withstand fatigue longer?
Sure.
So we have those different pieces that play a role there.
Let's see. Next one would be some of the identity issues. I think, and this was something that I struggled with for a long time competitively. I think I felt like there was an identity mismatch a lot of times because for a while I was doing really well competitively, but I had probably such a low, low self-esteem or low self-worth that I didn't believe any of that. So a lot of times there was a mismatch there. And sometimes I feel like it maybe goes on the other end of things too, where people have a very high, self-confidence and they have, very low maybe abilities. Your thoughts on kind of how we can align those two, if you will.
Yeah, so where that comes from is essentially a mismatch between credit and blame. And the fancy psych term here is going to be attributions, and back to Weiner's attribution theory. That's kind of the simplest one that we're still using. I mean, it was in 1972 is when he first published it, I think. And anything that we're still using from 72 has some staying power. Yeah. I mean,
Sure.
not a whole lot of stuff from 72 is still kicking around in science, and it can get more complex. Yeah. But at a basic line, we need to find a way to both accept credit when things go good, but then we also have to accept the blame when things don't go well. And that's the mismatch where we get that fake confidence because we're only paying attention to the good, and we're not paying attention to the bad. And so now we get into, again, more psych stuff. We get into confirmation bias, where we only see the data that already confirms our perspective. This is the not to go politics here, but this is the reason why Fox News people love Fox News and hate MSNBC. And exactly the opposite, right? MSNBC, people love MSNBC, can't stand Fox News. It's confirmation bias. They're going where they want. They're going where they're hearing what they already want to hear. Right. Same sort of thing. If I think I'm a rock star, and when I do something right, I think I'm a rock star, and I say, hey, look at all this. Never mind that I failed 9 times in order to get there. I don't even see that. I don't even pay attention. And that's where it can be really damaging again and dangerous if someone really truly is not acknowledging their failures, is not accepting their mistakes along the way, and they don't ever accept any of that blame. We get this false impression, whether that's identity, whether that's just how we view the world, whether that's an inflated self-importance, however we want to describe that in a different context, it's no good. So we're back to this balance idea of, no, man, you did some good and you did some bad. So own them both, fix what you can, improve what you can, and move on.
Is that getting back to your point of showing data and say, okay, this was the bad, this was the good, and here's the numbers to prove it, rather than their feeling on it?
Yeah, and we can use that to emphasize either one. Like we said, or we kind of mentioned, we've mentioned goal setting a couple times here and there. We mentioned anxiety a couple times here and there. One of the unique pieces of goal setting when done right is that you're writing the stuff down and you're tracking it and you're keeping it. So when that athlete comes to me later, right? Remember we had this inverse relationship. So when the athlete comes to me and says, man, I stink, I'm terrible, I'm no good, blank, blank, blank. If I can pull out that goal setting book and say, no, dude, look, in the last 6 months, you've achieved 80% of your goals. Here's all the metrics that show performance has gotten up, higher. How can you legitimately sit here and tell me now that you're a bad fighter, or you're piss poor, or you're not ready, or you're bad at XYZ?
Yeah.
No, man, I got your handwriting, your goals that you picked, your performance metrics that show you are legitimately, objectively a better fighter now, a better whatever now than you were 6 months ago.
Yeah, that's why I love filming most of our sparring sessions, because then if I can pull up a video from 6 months ago and say, just exactly that. Okay, do you feel like you're a better fighter now than you were, 6 months ago? Then great. I know sometimes I feel like I run into athletes where they feel like they have a pretty crappy day, and one thing I've asked a lot of those guys to do is, okay, let's write down, what'd you eat today? What'd you go through today? Things like that. So we can start to see, okay, what's this day look like, and what's your overall, well-being compared to this day where maybe it was lower because of, starting looking at some of those reasons there.
Yeah, that was a really popular, great, nothing wrong with it by any means. That was a really popular thing, late 70s, early 80s, sports psych, to do daily mood tracking things and daily positive mental attitude sort of checks. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. There's a lot of apps out there that you can create that just sort of a little simple scoring method and have those pieces out there. And it reminds me of something I wanted to say earlier, but I got sidetracked when you were talking about the effort level and squaring that up. Is it just this brutal conversation or not? I would argue that a lot of guys, gals, whatever, athletes, they don't know what hard work is.
Right.
And if you personally, Coach Bruce, have competed at this level, which I know you have. So if you know what it's like to be there and you know what it takes to get there, and you're staring at somebody that says they want to get there, but they're only giving you this, you got to square that up somehow. You got to point out whether it's the objective piece of data, number of hours in the gym or this, that, or the other. It's also just, no, man, I'm just telling you, the effort level that you're giving me right now, it's not enough. So sometimes we'll combine that with what you were talking about there about a rating scale sort of thing, tracking the daily mental attitude or what you ate today and all that with this. Hey, how was your effort today? And if coach gives an effort and athlete gives an effort, you create the scale. Yeah. And when it's too far, when it's too far off, we got to have that conversation.
Right.
Athlete says 5, you say 6 on a 10-point scale. Whatever, close enough. We don't care. Athlete says 10, you're looking at it going 2. No, bud, we got to have a conversation about this. And sometimes we got to pull in, if there's other fighters or other teammates in the room, hey, how do you think Johnny worked today? How do you think Andy worked today? And make that rating. And now we get a little more sort of cross-person accountability and building a little bit more of a culture in the shop too. Culture of working hard, or a culture of, again, accountability.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I've started to see more and more from great coaches is creating that atmosphere of helping everybody in there. I think I can't think of the guy's name because I like basketball, but I don't watch much. He's the coach of the Celtics, Brad Stevens, I think. How he has created kind of the system of like, okay, let's try to get everybody better, because you don't know if you're going to be playing for the Celtics, next week, next month, whatever. So if we can try to get everybody better in there, that's going to help everybody throughout. I think that's one of the toughest things as a coach that I try to push through, that oftentimes is hard because, with an individualized sport like this, I think that's, everybody, whether they tell it to you or not, is kind of out for their own kind of thing. And a lot of times I feel like the helping that other person get better so then you have a better training partner is going to be immensely helpful. But figuring out for me how to do it as a coach is difficult. And I see some of these guys sometimes where I'm like, oh man, this they've obviously got it figured out, or maybe they don't, and they're just showing that. But it seems like one of the hardest things to do in sports.
Well, you're also making a connection there between a team sport and an individual sport, right?
Sure.
And that's a huge difference. I would argue, in my experience anyway, I think individual sport coaches, so like yourself, right, don't do a good enough job. I've never observed you. I've never been in the shop for that, so I'm not knocking you, right?
No,
but in general, I don't think individual sport coaches do enough for the team support, the team social support, the team atmosphere, that we're in this together sort of thing. Because yes, we are ultimately in it for ourselves. I'm with you there. I'm not debating that point. But we also like when someone else in our crew does well.
Sure.
We do.
Yeah.
We hope it doesn't come at our expense, right? We hope it's
Right.
not against us. But Johnny over there is training with me all this time. I see all the effort he's putting in. I like to see when he does well also. And it also then, as a coach, maybe you are having a hard time reaching me because I'm a dum-dum, but you've done awesome things with Johnny over here. I see Johnny getting better through your coaching. I might actually listen to you a little bit more than next. And so that's the kind of atmosphere that we can work toward. It's a little different. Again, I'm not talking sunshine and bubbles here, but do we give attaboys? Do we give, gym-wide attaboys of when somebody executes a skill right or better or significantly better than they did 2 months ago or 6 months ago, or they execute something that they just now could do and before they were looking like a fish out of water kind of thing, looking like me if I went out there. How do we make that? How do we give those attaboys? How do we give those congratulations things without a trophy, without a belt, without those things? So we got to have some wins along the way. We can't just wait for those title bouts, if you will.
Sure. Yeah, that's, and as much as it's, an individualized sport, I feel like there's definitely within the sport, teams and camps that kind of really work around certain weights. And so for the longest time, it struggled because we'd have a guy that would be at 135 pounds that was really good, and we'd have a guy that was at 265 pounds that was really good, and it was tough to get those in. And so a lot of times we try to get that camaraderie between those same weights, because if you don't have that, it makes training very, very difficult if you don't have somebody roughly at your same skill level and roughly your same size. I mean, especially in this sport. And so that's been, I almost like to think of those guys as their own little group or their own little team within that, to try to develop that. And it's certainly been tough for me, because I hate seeing it, because we have people leave because of that, because they say, okay, I'm a 125 pound man. We don't have anybody anywhere near close to me. So I'm going to go to another gym that has a bunch of 125 pounders. And it seems like that's the kind of the way that a lot of the sport works. Okay, this gym has a lot of 205ers. This gym has a lot of heavyweights. So, any thoughts on some of those team building things within those groups?
Well, you said one of those scary words to me, team building.
Yeah.
Because team building, when done right, literally any activity can be team building.
Sure.
So I don't know that you necessarily meant a team building activity there. You just meant sort of how do we get this group, this collection
Sure.
of individuals, similar demographic individuals, to behave more like a group, behave more like a team. Part of that is going to be some degree of, I almost want to say sort of group consequence, and that could be good or bad, right? I don't mean negative. A lot of times we think consequence is bad, but I mean just inherent benefit or negative, that we're all getting it. We're all getting some benefit here. Yes, there's certain ways to do that as a coach. Yes, we can go down that road. You got to know more. It's hard. That's such an individualized thing that I'm not going to have a great answer for you on that one. I would need more information. Sure.
And as far as coaching styles, I guess, a lot of times I'll hear, okay, you can be, you should be coaching the positives. So like when the athlete does really well, try to catch him in that moment and really coach that positive and say, more than trying to find the negative side of things. Your thoughts on that?
Well, step one to coaching is don't be an asshole. I mean, that's...
Man, let me tell you, some days I'll fully admit to being an asshole. So,
it is, but I mean, it's unreal the number of times.
And usually, sorry, not to cut you off, but usually that is completely unrelated to the actual practice that day. Is more what to do, or what I have to do outside of the gym, my outside life coming into this group, and it's usually ends up in me blowing up in like 5 seconds and getting super angry. Not Bobby Knight angry, but just slightly angry, I guess, and then 5 seconds later apologizing and saying, okay, that's not the way that I should have played that, and moving on from there and trying to make the best of the practice. But it's sorry. So how should I not be an asshole?
Well, the other side there, the catch them doing something good, all the positives there. The reality as a coach, we default to part of your job description of being a coach is to find things that are wrong. Yes?
Right.
Same thing with me as a consultant. I want to find the sweet spot between finding things that are wrong and having a solution for them, and coming across as an asshole that, dude, you don't know anything. Your shop's dirty. Technique is bad. You don't know what you're doing. It's broken, worn down. Then you just come across as an ass, right? Same thing with technique for an athlete. If you're just always saying, man, your hip's out of line, your knee's wrong, your elbow's wrong, your shoulders are wrong, your head's tilted side, you're not looking where you need to look, that's kind of the default of coaching, right? We're picking on technique. Mm-hmm. Well, then the athlete only hears, you're not doing it right, bad, wrong, whatever. And the other part of that I really pick with coaches, because I do spend a lot of time observing coaches and listening. When an athlete does something well, we chalk it up and say, good job. Yes?
Right.
But when an athlete does something wrong, we say, no, left elbow in, right arm up. We give them such specific things they did wrong. And then on the flip side, when they do it right, we just say, all right, good job.
Right. We're not as specific on that side.
Spot on, man.
Sure.
So that is creating an imbalance there. It's creating a problem where if you're going to make a mistake, I'm going to blow you up and I'm going to make it so specific that you know exactly what you did wrong. But when you do something well, you're going to get, well done.
Right.
Good job. Nice work. Well, on what, dude? You've given me 22 negative corrections today. Which one of those or all of them did I finally hit for you? So with coaching, it is important about what you say and when you say it and how you say it. And it is important about the balance. You can't always just be banging on guys. Coaching styles, well, what is it that you believe in? That's the... And I would challenge, I'm not going to put you on the spot now, especially live, but the idea is when was the last time that you sat down and went through your coaching philosophy? What do you believe in? As a coach.
Sure.
I'm not talking technique. I'm not talking this move or that move. I'm not talking fight prep. Just what do you believe in? What do you want the fighters that are in here, competitive training, what do you want them to leave with from you? Is it a particular move? Is it a particular approach? Is it a worldview sort of thing? Is it, and by that I mean sort of related to fighting, but I mean, is that what it's about? Is it you could be a fighter and be a dad? Is it you can have these different balance pieces? Is it that there's actually science behind some of this stuff? It's not just out there two humans banging on each other. What is it you believe in? And really pushing that side.
Sure. Yeah. And that's, speaking about it freely, it's something that I think a lot of coaches have, somewhat formulated in their head, but certainly nothing usually ever written down. At least on the coaching side of things, it's only now that I'm starting, 10 years into the business and 15 years into coaching that I've really started to say, okay, this is we haven't even released this portion yet for the lesson plan stuff, because like I said, all of ours is, kind of segmented, if you will, that I'm starting to include some of the mindset of like, okay, once you get into this position, this should be your mindset from this position. So that'll be coming out probably in like, a month and a half, 2 months. And that was a huge portion that I needed to add, I felt like, because without that piece, they don't know a lot of the hows and whys and things like that. So.
Absolutely. And just with the idea of coaching philosophy, just a small little tip here. So just a reality, I guess, in Canada, our lovely cousins there to the north, if you want to coach 5-year-old T-ball through one of their normal organizations, you have to go through the basic online coaching course. Have to. I don't care if you're mom and dad.
Right.
Have to. And part of that is you have to write out your coaching philosophy. So as you just admitted and say, hey, look, I've never really written this stuff down, and most coaches haven't, and blank, blank, blank. Here's our friends to the north that make coaches do this if they're coaching 5-year-old volunteer T-ball and their kids on the squad. The idea is being systematic about it. The idea is having a purpose, being intentional about what you're doing, and knowing what you believe in. And especially as a coach, you run into all these situations that are challenging and difficult. And if you're presented with them as a one-off and you haven't thought about them up front, that's tough.
Right.
But if you have thought about them and you know what you believe and you know what you value, well, then it's a lot easier to make that decision, whether it's coaching or just general life.
Sure. In closing here, I just wanted to kind of go through one of the questions too was just competition day prep. We touched on it a little bit beforehand. Anything that you would add to that it sounds like from the, previous session or previous talk, most of that should be taken care of well beforehand, and everything should be kind of a greased wheel for that competition day.
Yeah, and part of that, take them to a competition. Assign them homework, if you will. Go to a competition.
Sure.
Sit in a frontish row. What are you feeling? What are you thinking? What are you hearing? How do you feel when the speakers buzz just that little bit in the moment? How's it smell? Do you taste talcum powder in the air? I spent enough time in gymnastics shops that I have to carry around lifesavers or mints or something because there's so much freaking chalk dust in the air that I can't, by the end of the day, I can't swallow. I can't barely talk.
Sure.
It's just so much chalk.
Yeah.
Same thing when I'm in a weight room. I can't handle the iron clanking all day long. I have a headache 90 minutes in. I will preemptively take Tylenol or whatever I got to knock that headache out because I know it's coming. So if I'm going to be in a weight room all day, I got to deal with that. Same sort of thing there for the fighters. On competition day, we need to know, what are you thinking? What are you doing? Get your butt in there and be prepped for that beforehand.
Great. And views on your competitors. Should I, is it going to be case by case as far as, you'll see a lot of people try to say, okay, I don't like this person. I want to, especially in fighting, I'm angry towards this person and I want to, beat him up, whatever. Or, on the other side, I think it was John Gordon-Levitt or the actor. I was trying to think of, I think that's his name, John Gordon-Levitt. Anyways, his philosophy on, acting was, okay, I can't perceive this other person that I'm with as a competitor. I have to perceive them as collaborator. So it's something. So his philosophy is, okay, if it's a sport or so like our sport, it would be, okay, we're collaborating to have a good fight together. Obviously, I want to win, but we're collaborating to have a good fight together and looking at it that way versus a competitor. Do you feel like there's certain people that have to get angry at their opponent in order to do this kind of stuff, or is it is that sometimes like a false sense that they need to get?
I'm not sure I'm going to say false, but it may be placebo.
Yeah.
I've always gotten angry and then I fought well. Therefore, in the next fight, I must get myself angry so that I will fight well. Yeah.
Sure.
So it may be sort of a learned behavior on that one. But I would also argue that those two positions that you described there, got to be angry and really hate the person kind of thing. I want to crush them.
Sure.
And then we're collaborating. We need to have a good fight together. Yes, I want to win. I would argue that those aren't incompatible. I would argue that the difference is a time thing.
Okay.
So weeks, months, general worldview out from the fight competition, you can have the collaboration, you can have all those sorts of things in that viewpoint. In the moment, if we start getting too feisty and focused on, I want to crush you, I want to hurt you, to me, that's setting us up anyway for some problems with attention bleed. I'm not focusing in on my execution of my skill, which if I do this properly, yeah, dude, you're going to get hurt. Yeah, I'm going to mess you up. And then ultimately, yes, I'm going to win. But is the focus on me executing my skill, or is it on the outcome of this other? I land my punch, I land my kick.
Sure.
Where are we focusing in? And almost always, we're going to be better in any sport focusing in on what we can control and executing our technique as planned, as prepped, as intentional as possible.
Yeah. And that's actually works perfect into the next question I have. Some coaches, and I was for the longest time never an advocate of watching a ton of film or having the athlete watch a ton of film on the person that they're going to be facing, for the mere fact that you'll see a lot of athletes really overhype their competition based on some of that stuff. And so, now if the athlete wants to do that, I'm more than up for that. But as long as they can honestly tell me that, okay, this doesn't affect what I'm trying to do. I want to go out and perform to the best of my abilities and do the things that I can, and not necessarily key on some of the mistakes that person's making.
Yeah, well, I think the difference in what you're setting there is the expectation, and you're being purposeful with it. No, man, this is a learning experience. This is not a hype experience.
Sure.
This is we're watching film to learn what we can learn objectively, and then we are going to use that to our advantage. That's different than, let's go watch this dude, let's get hyped up, let's go see who we're going to crush, let's get... that's a different move, man.
Right.
So being more upfront, more honest, more clear with why we're watching tape, I think that goes a long way with a lot of folks.
Great. That pretty much, I mean, we're at almost 2 hours now. That pretty much, I think, has most of my stuff. I was going to get into maybe some skill development stuff later as far as just learning, spaced repetition stuff, practicing under pressure, stuff like that. Maybe we'll have to have you on at another time. Any other big, huge portions that I missed that maybe we should talk about here over the next few minutes?
Self-awareness. Got to know what you're thinking. Got to know what you're doing stuff for. What's your why, right? I mean, Simon Sinek in his book, Know Your Why and the Power of Why and all these different things. Toyota had a whole lot of that in their manufacturing books when they became such a huge deal of understanding why problems exist, and don't just accept the surface level answer. Get down. If you want the legit answer, then one question probably isn't going to get it done. You're going to have to go a couple rounds with why to get to the real problem. So self-awareness, know what you're doing. Control is another huge piece with an athlete. Worry about what you can control. Focus on what you can control. Be where your feet are means, again, controlling what you can control. Can't control the other dude. Can't do it. All I can do is control my moves, whether it's my reaction to him or what I need to do in the ring. Control. Self-awareness and control are probably the two biggest themes that I end up working with individual athletes on.
Yeah. A little bit of that kind of touches into my days now as fatherhood, where it's like being able to have myself somewhat prepared for almost any situation now, so I don't have that anxious issue or craziness come up. And that's been huge for me, because I take care of her most of the time during the day, from 7 when my wife goes to work till 5 when she picks her up. And it's now I make sure that, okay, there's at least 3 or 4 food cups in there, we've got these extra things, and so that helps me so much on the father's side to keep from having anxiety in any situation there. And I think that is very true on the athlete side too. Make sure that we have, okay, do I make sure to pack my mouthpiece? Did I make for sure to do all these preparation things, so I won't have that oh crap moment 20-30 minutes before my competition? Because I've definitely seen that as well, where the athlete doesn't prepare properly. They're everything kit that they need to get ready, so when they go out there, there's a large amount of anxiety that doesn't need to be there because they didn't prepare in that small segment of their competition.
Yeah, and again, you got a bag that's going with you to the facility.
Yep.
Make a checklist. Print the damn thing out. I mean, it sounds silly and it sounds like what we do to a kindergartner, but at the same time, write it on there, man. Write on mouthpiece. Check the dang box when you put it in the bag. Whatever else you need in there to be ready and prepared, put it on the checklist. Write it out. Literally go that specific.
Awesome. So later on, like I said, down the road, I want to have some of the skill development side, and then also kind of, if you will, embracing the suck of training and stuff like that. So maybe we'll have another conversation about that. How can people get in touch with you if they want to do more one-on-one sessions with you, or if a coach wants to speak with you about his team?
Yeah. So if you're hearing this now or seeing this, you're obviously in contact with Bruce. Bruce knows how to find me. Easy enough. Email, phone, text, easy that way. Work out at the field house. You can call the field house out there next to the Pentagon. They'll find me. Most of my business is done cell phone, email, and it's easy to find me that way. And then we just find a time that works, and we try to get your performance better. That's what we're here for.
Awesome. Well, with that, thank you guys very much for tuning in. I'm going to go home and catch some Z's and do this again another day. Thank you very much for coming in and doing this, and thank you guys for watching.